Audio is on.
Thank you. Welcome to our April 2nd, 2024 Finance Committee meeting. We are meeting weekly at this point until we have set the budget. Administrators, I'd like to thank you for coming back. This is a brutal process, so thank you very much for returning. Finance Committee members, I would like for you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll do other board members. Beginning over from my left.
Starts me, Chris McWallen.
Becky Fless.
Jack Pitteroff.
Megan Carlson.
And Jeff Hammond is absent tonight. Don't know where he is. Other board members.
Alyssa Tracy.
Diane Potter.
Molly Rogers.
Tony B.
Joanne O'Brien.
Perfect. Administrative staff.
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent.
Andrea Dish, Business Manager.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum. Jerry McGuire, Director of Technology.
Sarah Sims, Principal of Gardner Regional Middle.
Alicia Morris, Director of Special Services. Karen Moody, Principal of Lower Richard School.
Vicky Duguay, Principal of Riverview Community School.
Sophie Rockwell, Principal at Princeton Rainbow Consolidated School.
Josh Farr, Director of Adult Education. Nate Stubbert, Athletic Director.
Lauren Arnold, Principal at Gardner Area High School.
And in the audience, we also have Linda Caputo, who is a returning Pittston School Board member. She'll be sworn in next week, so thank you for coming. It's nice to see you. Alrighty. Discussion of the 24-25 requested budget.
Okay, so let's start. The last meeting, we presented the board with a couple budget proposals. One included a $500,000 shift into a special ed reserve account. We got the sense that the board or the finance committee felt fairly comfortable with that. And if that is accurate, that number resulted in an increase in the budget of 9.28%. That reflects a $2,793,730 increase. To the taxpayers, that represented a 1.9 million plus, I won't go through all of it, or a 15.66% increase. Following that conversation, we were asked to come up with what deeper cuts would look like. Okay, what would be the impact of deeper cuts? So we're prepared today to share that information, and I will share some additional documents that I've created in hopes of facilitating that conversation. Before we do that, however, Andrea has also provided in your packet an update of the increase overview. So if you look at that particular document, you can see all the changes on the second page at the end that have also been made since the last time you were here. If you look, we have a reduction of another out-of-district placement. We have some football jerseys that were replaced. We have miscellaneous, and I want you to pay close attention to health insurance. So health insurance came in today. We found out this morning. If you recall, at last week's meeting, we informed you that the health insurance was going to range from a minimum of 1.5 to a maximum of 11.5. Our increase came in at 1.6. Woohoo. Last year, remember, we had 0. So this is amazing. So as a result, today, Andrea was able to remove from the budget just shy of $335,000 as a result. So that's pretty significant. So the last time that you saw this budget, it is now down another $417-ish thousand. So if you look at that, that means that our current budget increase is at $2,376,000 and change, or 7.9%. How that impacts taxpayers is we go from the 15.66%, we're now at 12.26%, which represent 1.5 million. All right, so as a reminder, we started at 5.1 million as an increase to the budget. So we were looking at, I don't remember, 38% to the taxpayers. So a lot of work has been done regarding this. Andrea, any additional information that should be shared?
No, you've hit all the highlights.
Okay. So at the last meeting, we had a very brief conversation about positions. And I remember Chris, talking a little bit about reductions, but we added some positions as well. So you'll see that I created a document that tried to capture a few things. So it's this one in colors. Okay, it's the one with the 4 boxes and shaded in. So what that does is in the top section, it shows that these are all of the additions that we included and added to the budget. And they include, due to some concern about the class size of an incoming kindergarten at Pittston Randolph and incoming at Helen Thompson, we added an additional teacher there. Okay, so they'll have 3 teachers versus 2. We needed to add a special ed speech pathologist because of the caseload. Our speech pathologists are at capacity with their caseload. We, as you remember, we used ESSER to fund some positions. Some of those positions were social worker. We had 1 social worker who was shared between the middle school and the high school. We are proposing, given the increasing need that we're seeing with our student body, that we have a full-time person at the middle school and a full-time social worker at the high school, not just a half-time. We also in ESSER had a full-time social worker at LER, and we are looking to maintain that position. We also shifted over instructional literacy coach, a math instructional coach, and an instructional support person. As a reminder, that is our assistant principal at Helen Thompson. Half of her position's in the budget, the other half is in instructional support that was in ESSER. We're also looking at splitting the director of operations and the transportation so that there are 2 separate positions based on increased workload and demand. It is becoming an absolutely impossible job. And I think Andrea provided the increase that actually works out to be about $11,000 increase by splitting those 2. We're looking at that, and then we needed some additional special ed technicians. Looking at staff reductions, reducing a grade 1 teacher position at LER, the class size in that particular grade is low enough that we are able to maintain just three teachers. One of your other handouts that you may want to refer to is the projected class size sheet. You've seen this before. I updated it with March's current information so that you can see what the current class sizes are for each of the buildings, the elementary buildings, and then you can see what the enrollment is at the middle school and at the high school, and what the projection is next year. I also provided off on the side what the class size, projected class sizes. The projected staffing levels based on policy. Sorry about that. Okay, so you may want to reference this when I go through some of this information. We talked last week about the elimination of a school counselor position at GRMS. That was spoken to by Sarah. And in exchange for that, we really do need that full-time social worker at the middle school. We talked about the reduction of a social study teacher at the middle school. That's due to a decline in enrollment, and Sarah did speak to the impact that that would have. She is welcome to talk about that again for board members who would like to know the impact. And then we talked about a 1.5 time position, or 1.5 full-time equivalency positions at the high school in science. And that was due to enrollment. This document didn't fully capture my notes, actually. Decline in enrollment and some scheduling changes. And so Lauren wasn't here at the last meeting. And so Lauren is actually here tonight prepared to talk in detail about the implications of any of those reductions. A position in English And that is due to, again, declining in enrollment, scheduling changes. And we did mention that that will result in fewer electives. Electives will not be eliminated, there'll still be some, but absolutely there is an impact with fewer electives. We also didn't mention, because we did this earlier on, but there was a special ed teacher position at Pittston Randolph. We had two positions previously, and we had one unfilled position, so that was removed. And we had a transliterator, and the student move, that's no longer needed, so that has been reduced. So that's where we were last week. I guess I'll stop there and ask board members, finance committee members, questions. See if you have any.
I have three. The first one is for Sarah about social studies. Are our students well prepared in social studies? Do you need this position?
Could you, it would be really great, when you guys speak, if you're called on administrators, it'd be really helpful if you would come up to the podium, please.
And I'm trying to ask in a way that doesn't make it sound like I think you're not doing it right. Because I don't think that at all. But I do think that there's a need for students to understand history, social studies, and civics really well. So is this something that we're robust in, or something that we can do better?
No, I think you have a really valid point. It is important for our kids to have exposure to social studies. One of the, I think, enriching pieces about our curriculum is that although in our social studies content at the middle school, students revisit that at the high school level in those courses. So although they get a precursor and they get some of that preliminary information, they also will be re-exposed to it again at that high school level. So what they will miss out on some of it, they would still get some curriculum, but they would miss out maybe on some of those deeper levels, but they will still have the opportunity at the high school to dig back into it.
Okay, and it's required at the high school, or
No, for graduation.
just want to make sure that we're not missing something.
And Lauren will go through the graduation
Yes,
requirements, just to make sure everyone knows what they are.
Anybody else have a question for Sarah while she's there?
Is it technically required now for seventh graders?
That's really a really great question. There are, yes, so there are standards that are attached that come from the Department of Education that we have to follow. We know that we'll be doing some work with Angela as the curriculum director to talk about what standards and where do we need to slim down on layers so we still manage to maintain hitting all of those standards, providing them that overview that will then support them for the work at the high school.
Just know that the impact of our current sixth grade, they've had an interesting or different year in that respect. And so moving on to seventh grade and continuing that less than full-time feeling, it's just, are we setting up, this one particular class or grade and for needing extra help in high school? Because they're revisiting rather than, exploring deeper.
And I think those are always concerns, right? What I do know is that we have very exceptionally talented staff, right? Who go above and beyond to ensure that it's enriching. Our teachers work really collaboratively with each other to try to do a lot of cross-curricular experiences. I know our English teachers have done a lot of work this year with bringing in some of those elements so that they're not missing out on components, that it's still being brought to them. So I feel like we have a really strong idea of how we can continue that trajectory.
And I guess I would add, or maybe ask you to speak to, we are taking a look at the budget and realize that we have to be really cognizant about what we're asking taxpayers to absorb. And we have to balance our needs, which is what we're trying to do, with the fact that the middle school is also looking at a decrease next year of about 29 students. And so how do we respond to that? So we're trying to look across the building to see which or what has, everything has an impact. So I don't want to say something doesn't have an impact, but what we can absorb, and manage. But everything absolutely has an impact. The board or the committee, it is up to you to decide, yes, we want to continue with that reduction, or you may say, you know what? No, I don't support that. I am hearing that there's an impact to that particular class, and therefore we want that added back in. That is entirely up to you to be making that sort of decision. But if you make that decision, it's understanding that the administration has looked really hard across the district at multiple places. And if you're looking at deeper cuts, I'm not sure where else those cuts are going to come from. We're still doing some of our work behind the scenes, but the majority of our budget, of your budget, is staff and benefits. And so if you want reductions, that's where the impact will be to some degree.
Yes, Jack?
So conversely, could you briefly speak, what do you think would be the difference if we were able to maintain that teacher? Is there?
Maintain teacher.
You mean if we kept the social studies teacher? I mean, I think that there were certainly some adjustments we still need to make, just in general in regards to sixth grade. We did a model this year that we managed to work. We learned some interesting things along the way. We might need to take a deeper look at that, but I know today we've been having ongoing scheduling discussions about how could this look and what are different options and what are the longer impacts. When you're doing those detailed schedules, it's kind of like playing Jenga with cards stacked on top of them, and you know what I mean? And you remove one piece and these cards fall off and you gotta put them back up, and it's complicated, right? Because it's not just this is our schedule and these are the classes. Students have different needs and different programming. I think that having a social studies teacher is awesome. Unfortunately, the teacher that would be losing their position is wonderful. But we also understand that there has to be some balances, right? And when we're looking at those implications, do we think we can manage it? Yes. Are there going to be impacts? No doubt. Like I said, for me, what I feel better about in this situation is that we know they're going to have the exposure at the high school level. And so they're not going to completely miss information. They're going to have that opportunity to explore it again at a later time. So it might be a short-term loss because they might not get as deep, but they will still have social studies for 2/3 of the year at least. So there might have to be some give and take, but they will still be able to revisit some of those deeper layers at a later time.
Thank you, Diane, and then Joanne.
Could you explain again, maybe I'm missing something, but of the 3 grades at your school, this year there was 1 social studies teacher and you did some different things to try to make up for it, but will there be 2 social studies teachers in the other 2 grades?
So currently we have 5 social studies teachers. We had 2 at 8th grade, 2 at 7th grade, and then 1 at 6th.
Yes.
And then many of our 6th grade teachers picked up social studies to help ensure that it was completely covered. With this current loss, we would go down to 4. So we would have to maintain 2 at the 8th grade level because that ginormous 7th grade class is coming up. Which is what, 153? 65, look, it's very large, and I feel like every child that transfers is a 7th grader, no doubt this year. In fact, it's like, oh, we've got a new one, what grade? But we have to have 8 teachers at the 8th grade level next year in order just to meet class size enrollment layers according to board policy. Classes right now are really sitting at 23 for that. We can only have up to 25 and they're according to policy. So it's very tight. That means we would then have 2 social studies teachers to cover 6th and 7th grade. We proposed a different model to pull the social studies off of our other teachers' teaching content to try to not add that to them, where we would incorporate the social studies into our allied arts schedule with a rotation. The impact there, however, means that they then lose some of those allied arts options because that social studies would have to be a mandatory component. The other option that we've been doing some discussion with staff is, does everybody want to pick up more social studies, right? So that we continue to keep it sort of integrated. So there's just some balances back and forth that we're trying to figure out, and how do we maintain that? Which one is best for kids, number one, and then which one is most or best again, then for staff second, right? Because it's about the kiddos. So that's where where our focus is which of these models meets their needs best.
Joanne?
If we kept the fifth social studies teacher, could they be split? Half-time sixth grade, half-time seventh grade, and then trade off the trimester so that each student gets 3 trimesters, 3 modules of social studies?
So can I just, so Joanne, that's more of a management thing that Sarah and her staff will deal with and what that schedule should look like. So I just want us to be careful about going, again, too deep into something that it doesn't matter here as to how she schedules it. If they only have 5 teachers, then they will be creative and try to figure out how to make that happen. So.
What I'm just trying to find out is, will the students then in 6th and 7th grade have all 3 modules or 3 parts of that trimester covered by a social study teacher?
Perfect question. That's the type of question that we need you to ask. So
Okay.
thank you.
Yep, so some of that really just depends on the model of how we can use. So in the model where one of our proposals where we're putting social studies into the allied arts schedule, they would both be teaching 6th and 7th grade, but and our idea is that way kids can actually get 2 trimesters and they would be able to kind of focus in on a specific content layer so that they are not teaching everything for both contents all year. They can kind of departmentalize the different standards that they're teaching. To do the third one, I don't have another teacher in order to make that 3rd trimester work unless all of our teachers, we shift to the other model where every teacher has to pick that up. It just doesn't work with the way the rotations occur, unfortunately.
So I'm wondering if,
I just wanted.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just put it up. Just one other thing, just maybe as a general question. So this year, we're looking at, a dip, or this year to next year, we're looking at that dip in the middle school. The elementary schools aren't quite making it up, but there's a slight increase at the elementary. Where are we gonna be at to meet that need, depending what it is, or is that something we'll just deal with when?
I think you were in my head.
That's,
Get out of here.
again, that's a decision for all of you.
Yeah.
You receive every single month
Yep.
the enrollment update, so you can see what is coming down the pike. And there is a blip in 4th grade where we have 150. So, but immediately after that, we're down to 118. Then immediately after that, we're back up to 133. So we do have one more little blip, but that's it.
Oh, thank you.
And it is 15 students fewer than, what they're experiencing right now. Now, a lot could change. Again, there is a
Every 7th
tendency.
grader comes to the middle school.
There is a tendency, right, that whenever you have that larger class, that's always the class that new students, arrive and register for. But
And a lot of our response to that, in forward thinking, we've had those discussions, is where we have the 2 teachers at the 8th grade level, we may have to shift to 2 teachers at a different grade level and reverse some of the model. So we've been talking long-term, what does this look like long-term? And then what happens if we have to shift again is another point.
Thank you.
I want to paraphrase what I feel like a lot of us are feeling like right now is that while we have like really high confidence in what you're doing and your capabilities and the teacher's capabilities, I hate the idea of cutting a social studies teacher. And everybody that I've talked to has said the same thing, and I just want to throw that out there. Like, it doesn't feel good, and I know that we're trying to be responsible for the taxpayers, but this doesn't sit well with me, so I'm not quite ready to say this is cool.
Alyssa.
My comment isn't specifically for Sarah if she wants to sit, but I'm jumping
Oh,
off
no, I
where
have one more
Jack's
question.
going, but I want to wait till you tell me you want me to do that.
But I would say before we start talking about individual positions, there's a lot here. I would
That's
really
fair.
like the opportunity for administrators to be able to go through and talk about the implications of each and every one and not just hyper focus on one, because there are implications across the board.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. My head was going more to, we always get this notion of a number, and I'm not on finance this year, but I've been here before. We always have this like number about reduction of the overall budget, and I'm jumping off what Jack said. If we just got a savings of $300,000, what, we shouldn't cut any teacher positions, in my opinion. That's how I feel. So I just wanted to say that because Jack was headed there. I appreciate we have mental health issues and we need other positions, but, and these folks have done a great job of getting into the details, but that's why I came tonight. That's why I watched all the meetings and I just feel pretty strongly about it, so.
Thank you for
Yeah.
watching.
You bet.
And just for clarity, I'm sorry, but just for clarity purposes, that 12.26% that we shared tonight, the 1.5 million, it includes the health insurance reduction.
Right,
It also includes all of the reductions listed in the blue. Okay,
right.
so if you make the decision to add positions back in, that bottom number is increasing. Okay,
Right.
so just so you're aware, okay.
Thank you.
So my question for you or Andrea is, so we've got this bubble coming of 165 in the 7th grade next year. So that's my concern is the question, is this the year to eliminate that position? Or should we wait one more budget year since we can project 15 students is different than 25 or 30 students? So is that something that we should consider keeping? And we don't have to decide that right now, but just in that thought bucket of since we have that blip coming. I leave it to you guys. I just want to ask.
keep it, no.
And I don't want to,
I think it's a valid point. Like I said, we are trying to plan and we're trying to be responsible to the needs of the budget while also trying to be responsible to the needs of our students. And so I think that, again, there's a give and take on all sides of that coin. Is it a give now or is it a give later? It's a hard call. Because you never know, we could have a ton of kids come in this summer and we're struggling and we're coming, you just never know. So right now with the information we have, we do feel that we can make this model work. And we think we have a plan on how to make it work for years to come. But everything is always adjustable, right? The only consistent thing in life is change.
Right. And I concur. I don't like to cut any positions. However, for me, it's really great to not know who people are. We can't put faces on it. We're the business end, and we do live in a small community. And yes, we're all neighbors together, but it can't be personal for us. We're here for every single student. We're also here for all of our staff. But what can we afford? And while I concur, I don't want to cut anything. I want to be really conscious of the numbers that we're looking at, the blips that we have. So I throw it out there and I let you guys fix it and tell us what we need to, look at me like that. Tell us what we need
Not
to
up
do.
to us.
Because, well, you guys are the experts. Tell us what you can do and then how do we make that fit?
Well, I'm
But our
gonna
job
push
is to
back.
take
I don't
that
know that that's.
And offer our opinions, just to be clear.
No,
So,
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think to push back a little bit, Becky, I mean, you guys need to tell us what bottom line you're comfortable with.
right.
I don't have a bottom line. We haven't been given a bottom line because this is so large, okay? And it's so overwhelming. And that's what we're feeling as administrators. It's like, where do I go? I don't know what to reduce. I don't know how far, how deep. The last meeting, you asked us to show you what it would be like to go deeper, which is what we're prepared to do tonight. But I'm not sure what else to do without knowing a bottom number. So I hear you.
Right.
We're making the best decisions that we can, believing that you're not going to send a $2.7 million increase to
Correct.
taxpayers.
I have a different question then.
But okay,
So what is the impact? how much is the impact of that one position? If we were to keep that one position, what is the impact?
Well, but I would ask that you talk about all of the other positions
Yeah, the
first,
numbers.
Right,
but
and I'm taking notes here, so I want to write all the numbers down.
it's on the document that you were provided up here. Where is it, Andrea?
276.
I was cut last meeting.
All right, so
last
what is it?
61 now, it was $400,000 reduced. Right?
So that position is 61,276.
And which
DRMS teacher.
DRMS.
Thank you. Where was so many numbers? Right here.
It's under addition GAH athletic stipend.
No,
No.
Isn't that?
It's directly
it's not athletic. Oh, it's under.
Right, so it's right here, 61,276.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starring that one. I just wanna, I
Yeah,
just
that's
need
what I
numbers.
did, Becky. It's that one, the next one, and then GHA's science and English.
So as a reminder, that is not the amount that, the cost of the teacher for a year. The cost of the teacher is actually more than that.
Yes,
That excludes the 5 summer payments as well as benefits. So if we keep it, moving forward, it would be more than that.
Yeah, 25% do you use or 30?
I actually, my system actually doesn't.
Oh, yes.
I am looking.
Very good.
and again, I'm asking because of the blip we have coming. That's my
So,
next.
yeah, can we
Let's
kind of
go on.
move on?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're good, Sarah,
Anybody
thank you.
Oh, please.
So,
Thank you.
right, so the other 2 positions that we talked about a little, well, that was mentioned last time, was science, looking at 1.5 positions being reduced, and an English position. So Lauren, would you come on up and, for the time being, just really focus on those 2? And I know I was asked to go deeper later, we can talk about that later.
I have something to show.
So
too.
Andrea, can you stop sharing so
I
that
absolutely
Lauren
can.
can? Lauren, are you in?
It says the host is waiting for me. That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're connecting. Click and reopen so I can share, Terry. I'm gonna show just graduation requirements
great.
first. Yeah. There we go, okay. And then talk about the 2 positions Pat just referenced. So for our graduation requirements, students are required to have 4 credits in English, so that's 1 each year. 3 in math, 3 in social studies, 1 in wellness, which is physical education, a half credit in health, 1 in visual performing arts, which could be band, chorus, video production, 1 in career prep, 1 in world language, 4.5 electives, and 60 hours of community service. So there's a total of 22 credits required to graduate. So if we look at the 1.5 in science. So we currently have some staff retiring, some have already left. So we have right now 4 vacancies in science. To reduce the 1.5, in a way, we've already been covering it this year because we had 1 staff member leave during the year. So to reduce that 1.5, our halftime teacher would need to become full-time, and we've not filled that other position. If we do this, if we reduce 1.5 positions, we'd have 2 teachers that would have to teach 5.5 classes, and 4 teachers that would have to teach 6 classes. Most of our departments are teaching 5 classes with a study hall, so that would put some above that benchmark. And one teacher would have to prepare for 4 different classes. That means I'm teaching like 4 different classes, like biology, chemistry, physics, they're all different. So normally what we try to do is we try to make it so our teachers are only prepping for, you know, like 3 or less classes. That way it's a little bit easier and more manageable. So we'd have one teacher that would have to prep for 4 different classes, and other teachers would have to prep for 3 different classes. So that would be the 1.5 reductions in science. And that would mean possibly, you know, a reduction in electives, or just less opportunities.
So the 4 vacancies, I will just share, that's a concern. Trying to fill 4 science vacancies is going to be a
And
challenge.
there's 38 open science positions on serving schools right now. And so we have 1 posted right now for our environmental life science class that would work for the outdoor class, and we can still carry on that program. But that's all we've posted so far. Any questions about that?
Are we not having science graduates?
Yeah.
We're just not applying.
I think, I mean, in education in general, we're seeing a decline in.
Yes, yeah.
Field, so.
No, I get that for sure. No, I get that for sure. Okay, Joanne?
Well, I would say with it, you said one science teacher would have 4 preps to do.
Not like prep periods
No, no,
for the
no.
off,
They
but like
have to
preparing
prep
for,
for 4
yes.
different periods.
Yeah.
I would say that is very difficult to be hiring if a teacher comes in and is having to prep where, you know, even 2, I think, is good. 3 starts to become a stretch because that's a lot, but 4 is kind of ridiculous. I'm sorry, again, not to be too judgmental, but, you know, I don't think that hiring issues are just a matter of money. Because I think generally speaking, in the state of Maine, salaries are pretty similar among school districts our size. I think that we would want to fill at least 1 position. Not, and maybe have a reduction of the 0.5. Only because that becomes onerous to at least that 1 teacher, and frankly, the other teachers are losing prep periods because they have to cover classes.
They would still have their, like all teachers would still have their assigned prep free period off, so that wouldn't be impacted, but they would just be preparing for 4 classes, which is a lot. And then, you know, we can go back to the drawing board to see if we can reduce that, but it'd be very difficult to get.
So-
them to that.
We do have a board policy.
Yep.
On prep time, and prep time is met under this model. So teachers will receive the amount of prep that is required by policy. I certainly hear what you're saying about the individual. I totally get that. I am concerned that we're not going to fill 4 positions. And especially with so many vacancies. So we could keep all of these positions in, that's certainly your choice, and then be in a position where we don't fill them. And we're still in the same situation that we're here today, and we're carrying positions that can't be filled because there just aren't enough educators out there. It's just one of those positions, and there are many of them, that we can't fill, and school districts around the state and around the nation can't fill.
In science, we have pretty specific certification requirements for what classes need to be taught, so it's a little bit more difficult. And all of our class size policies are met with these each. Okay, English. So if we were to reduce 1 English position, so currently fully staffed, we have 7 teachers. In our next year's schedule, if we had 7 teachers, we would be able to offer about 14 electives, which would be covered within 7 teaching blocks. These would be holding to class size policies, but we would have some lower class sizes in our essentials classes, which help support special ed minutes and struggling students. So if we were to reduce 1, the implications would be we would have a reduction from 11 electives offered to possibly a range of 2 to 6, 6 if we were able to get really creative, 2 if we weren't. We have about 274 students who have signed up for an English elective, and these students would need to go elsewhere for their elective credit. And as we all know, electives help attract and retain students to Gardner. And if we were looking at staffing, this would be a reduction of one staff member. But this staff member could move to a different position within our building. So it wouldn't be complete loss or elimination, but they would have to shift roles. Yes.
274 students signed up for an elective. If you offer 6, how many students could get in?
If we offered 6, we would be pretty close to that 274 number.
6 times 20, 120, right? 120, like at least half the students would be able to earn an elective through.
Oh, from 11, yeah, sorry, I misread you. If we went from 14 electives to 6, yeah, that number would be probably cut in half. Or more than half.
Can I ask what kind of electives those would be?
Yeah, for the English department.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like film studies, reading for fun, Holocaust and civil rights, public speaking. Give me some more.
Theater arts.
Theater arts is one.
Philosophy.
Exploring the graphic novels.
On the
Quebec,
Quebec.
creative writing.
Yeah,
The kind of hasn't run since 2017.
yeah,
Those sound like some
but
great
creative writing is
experiences.
interesting. So with that, it was, with that 2 to 6, if, say we were talking about 4, it'd be prioritizing the students that were the most interested in some of those electives and the ones that really hold a lot of value, so.
Could you also just dig in, I hear that there's interest in the electives, I totally get that. What are the class sizes for those who've signed up for some of those classes?
So we are approaching 20 to 21 in almost all classes right now, across the board in our district, I mean, our school. So I think our lowest are those essentials classes, but we're trying to really hit that 18 to 23 range. So in English specifically, they're all about 18 to 21, 22.
The same for all of the electives that you just said?
Some of those electives, so like film studies had 90 kids sign up. The other ones are ranging from about 15 to 18.
Would we have to approve the curriculum for which electives get removed?
23 in creative writing.
Would we have to do that? Can we approve
Would you
the curriculum?
create the,
Like, how would you do that?
You approve the program of studies, but you don't approve which courses end up enrolling.
Gotcha.
Because it's a management issue, but depending upon student interest
Yeah.
and availability of staff across certain blocks.
Thank you. That's what I was asking.
So right now, some electives, if they didn't hit that
Yeah,
policy of class size numbers, we
Gotcha.
weren't planning on running.
maybe beyond that. Okay.
and that is absolutely happened across the district
Yeah,
in
I just wanted
lots
to
of ways.
clarify. Yeah, very good.
So
Okay.
Lauren has spent a lot of time really looking, so
Very
there
good.
are some classes where, maybe 5 students signed up.
Right.
Those classes aren't running.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So just in the classes that we were looking to run in next year's schedule, it was about 11 electives that we were looking to
Okay.
run.
Very good. Thank
And a
you.
reduction of a staff member would mean those 11 electives drop to a range of 2 to 6, depending on how flexible and creative we can get.
Joanne?
From the letter I got from David Lessard.
Yep.
He mentioned a lot of what you just said. He said that the English department also sponsors school-wide events such as the Literary Festival, Poetry Out Loud, A Little Night Poetry,
Yep.
Tigers Create. A reduction in a staff member, would it affect those wonderful programs?
It wouldn't eliminate them, no, but I'm sure there would be some capacity issues, but we'd still be able to run all of them.
And those, the people that are doing all this hard work, because I know it's really hard work to do all of those things.
Yep,
Are there stipends to these positions?
some, some are built into our curriculum.
Some are built into the contract,
Yeah.
but not all.
Yep. Can you share what deeper looks like?
Not yet. Are there follow-up questions regarding those 2 things?
Can
Okay,
you share this after? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Awesome.
so then you can stay there because we'll get there. So I've already mentioned the special education position, so I don't know if you have questions about that, and the transliteration had to do with a student not being in the district. So any questions about that to Alicia?
just the special ed unfilled position that can go into the special magic fund?
It wasn't filled this past year.
Right.
So
So that,
we're removing it, so it won't be in the fund
okay,
because it will be
removed.
reduced.
Great, thank you. That was my,
So then,
Other question,
you
yeah.
all then asked, what would deeper look like? So deeper. Looking at deeper, well, there's kindergarten at LER. If you look at the class size ratios, we've talked about the fact that if you keep the 4 staff members, the class size is absolutely low. You know, it's down around 13.25. If you keep it at the class size policy, and the policy is 16 is a target, 18 is the max. Okay, so at 17.67, you're within your range. You could get away with 3. However, we also talked about concerns that we're pretty close to the max. And some of the needs of our students coming in are greater than what we've seen before. We have a high number of CDS students coming in with great need. And if we're able to lower the number and allow our staff to work more closely with those younger students, we're hoping to be able to address some of their academic needs, address any other needs that they have, so that they will be able to transition more successfully in upper grades. So I don't know, Karen, since we're talking about you, Karen, do you want to speak to this at all?
Sure, so we're just kind
Do
of.
you want to stand up here, please? Thank you.
Lauren, don't go far.
Hello. And to clarify the positions you listed, Joanne, those aren't stipend positions, those are embedded into the contract and the curriculum.
Thank you.
So we're just kind of keeping an eye right now. For last year, we had a dip in our kindergarten, which is why we have like 3 kindergartens now. One of the teachers, we took her class and disseminated into the other 3 classrooms, and she's doing Title I this year. I certainly don't want to do that again to a teacher. That's a pretty rough change that they have to do, especially when you're getting close to your students. So we're really keeping an eye to see if the enrollment is better this year than it was last year. We did see a smaller class size in pre-K last year, but this year we're right back up again. So just trying to keep an eye. At this point, we have 35 kiddos that are in our pre-K program that are coming to LER for kindergarten. Through the CDS meetings we just had, we have another 5. So we're at 40 right now. I've been checking in with Heather. I haven't had a chance this week to check in again. We had a couple that signed up. So I think we're at like 42, 43 right now. And that doesn't include usually what happens. Usually what happens in the summer is we get at least 10 more kids sign up. Last year it didn't happen. So Pat and I were both shocked at like, uh-oh, what happened? We had a class of 9. So kids moved, they didn't show up. So anyway, we're just kind of keeping a really close eye. We were hoping in the next couple of weeks to really decide whether or not we are able to keep the position or to reduce it.
So if you feel like there's a position that needs to be reduced, you know, technically, when you look at your class size policy, you fall within the policy, but there is the concern that Karen just mentioned, and staff right now are heavily involved in those CDS meetings. And I've previously mentioned to you that the numbers for CDS are greater than we've ever seen. Last I knew, we had 40-ish students coming in from CDS, and we've never seen that many. So again, the lower class sizes, I think, will benefit the students, that in the long run, they will make greater growth as a result if we can really target their needs early on. So, but that's a possibility. Then we'll go back to the high school. That if indeed, and some of my notes here are cut off, I know Lauren will go deeper, but if you really want more reductions, we can look at a social studies position at the high school. If, again, that's due to the decline in enrollment, but if you do that, there are absolutely no electives for social studies. There would be 0 electives, and without any electives, that would mean more students in study halls. We could look at a half-time world language, but if you did that, your exploratory French class would be lost. Science, we could eliminate 1 more science, but if you did that, your labs would have to be incorporated into your class, right? So there would be the loss of some instruction there, but I'd let you speak more about it.
This is where it starts getting really difficult and there's greater impacts to our students, less opportunities for them. So if you look at history, there's no electives we could run. So it'd be graduation requirement classes only. I have a slide at the end that kind of just summarizes the major implications of really any of these cuts, but the more we reduce electives, the more difficult it becomes to fill our student schedule where they have to have 22 credits. And we can't fill 22 credits with just graduation requirement classes only. So in history, there's no electives. We would have to offer less dual enrollment. So currently in our proposed schedule right now, we can offer 3 teaching sections of a dual enrollment class and an AP class. If we were to reduce, we'd have to reduce at least one section of dual enrollment and possibly look at running that AP class or not. We would have increased class sizes. We also have been working on our credit recovery policy this year. So in the past, students have been able to, throughout their 4 years, take credit recovery for any class they failed with a 50 or higher, and not having to do it in a specific timeline. This year, we've adjusted our timeline. So if any students fail first semester, they have until the end of the school year to do credit recovery. If they don't, they have to go take that class again. So having to take that class again, if they don't do credit recovery, might increase some of our numbers. Where we've tried to account for that a little bit, but we're still holding to that like 21, 22 in a lot of areas in social studies. And it would be a reduction of 1 probationary staff member. And there's just a note that we're doing a lot of literacy grant work that Angela's referenced and department. History would be a good department to assist with. Any questions on history? And currently, with history, we're able to offer, off the top of my head, about almost 5 electives right now, not counting the dual enrollment classes. And we're looking at some exciting opportunities if we have the room to. If we were to look at world language, currently in our 24-25 schedule, fully staffed, we're offering 14 language courses. Levels 2 through 4 technically count as an elective, but most colleges want 2 years of that foreign language. We do have a yearbook course that 2 of our world language staff members cover. And class sizes within this department are meeting policy, except for some of the higher level classes where we just don't have enough kids to hit that like 20 mark. But they're still pretty healthy numbers. So if we were to reduce a half-time world language, that would mean no exploratory French could be offered. Exploratory French is typically for those students that need a little bit slower of a pace or additional help. Maybe they have some literacy struggles. French 3 would be needing to combine with French 4. And as a former French teacher, I can tell you curriculum wise, that's very difficult. It wouldn't be an easy thing to do because the kids are just at very different topics within the curriculum. It'd be doable, but it would be difficult. We'd have to look at absorbing students into either French 1, so those exploratory students, which is about 11 students, would need to go into French 1. If they did do that, we have to offer another section of French 1. Or if they went into exploratory Spanish, another section of Spanish, which would put 2 of my staff members at 6 classes, teaching 6 classes. They're doing this would kind of impact the French program, which has already been impacted by a reduction at the middle school. We're seeing less kids going into French because they don't have access to it early on. And our Spanish numbers are quite high already. So having to do a lot of absorbing into those Spanish classes would be a little bit tough and it would really increase those numbers. And this staff would be a reduction of 1 staff member. And this position had been a full position, but was reduced in 2022 to this half-time position. So it would be pretty tough in that language. If we looked at 1 additional science position, so it would be not filling an open position. So none of these science reductions would result in losing a body that we currently have. But this would be pretty difficult. So all of our lab classes that run a period and a half. So that means lab bio, lab physics, and honors chemistry all run a period and a half. We would have to reduce all of those to a period, which would be about a loss of about a third of instructional time that our students currently receive for those classes. 4 out of our 5 science teachers would have to teach 6 classes. And it would result in an elimination of a dual enrollment course, AP biology, or an essentials class or biology for daily living, which support our students that need a little more assistance. And we'd also be looking at losing electives like anatomy, physiology, and forensics. And we noted just that there was a full-time position that was also reduced in 2022, which was the half position we were talking about earlier today. So it'd be pretty tough if we do the science one, doable, but tough. And just overall implications of these cuts. So we talked about credit recovery. So just accounting for those students who might fail the second semester, those numbers haven't come in. We can kind of anticipate, but that might increase our class sizes. On average, we have about 30 plus new students coming over the summer. We also have some leaving, so that might balance out. It's hard to really account for that. Our teachers just wanted to share, like, the more that they have a workload increase, so they hit that 6 class minimum, it's a lot of work, and it might reduce some wanting to do extras like clubs and that kind of stuff. As I shared, we have to have the 22 credits to graduate, and our core classes just don't add up to 22. So we do need some electives. And students to be full-time have to be enrolled in 5 classes or 2.5 credits worth. And a lot of our classrooms right now are only fitting about 22 to 24 desks. So if we have reductions and we have bigger class sizes, we'd have to get more creative with using some of our bigger rooms like the ATM room. And we have a need for study halls. So the more teachers I have at 6, the less study halls. So it all kind of compounds together. So.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Also on the list to just kind of keep this ball rolling. Yeah. Effective. And then that will allow you for discussion. Plus, we need to follow up from last week's conversation with athletics. Nate is here, so we need to talk a little bit about the freshman basketball as a follow-up. So also down here, things that we've been looking at, I put it under deeper staffing reductions, but some of it we may be able to just do. One is the elementary administrative assistant position. All of our elementary schools have an administrative assistant position, but we also have a shared position between LER and HT. It's a really helpful position to do, to fill in if there is an administrative assistant who is absent, to do the newsletter, to do those types of things. But you know, that position was created years ago when we didn't have a full-time nurse in every building. Now we have a full-time nurse in every office. So that's a possibility. You know, that is an area where if we need a reduction, we could probably take that. Instructional coach, you've heard about the importance of the instructional coach and how important they are. But we do have that math position that we've shifted out of ESSER that we haven't been able to fill. So again, you know, depending on where you want to be, how deep you want to go, that's a potential reduction. And
Is that the one in the
yes,
pink?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then ELL, we currently have 2 ELL. So ELL, what is the current term words for that acronym? What is it?
MLL, it's now MLL.
MLL. Okay, multi-language learner. So sorry, I apologize. It keeps changing.
Yes.
So
Why does it need to change?
multi-language learner. So we currently have two teachers. Our challenge is that they are trying to provide services across 6 buildings. But we feel that we can do with, we can make 1 teacher and 1 ed tech 3 work. So we can make a small reduction there and make that shift. So, and then I included over to the bottom right, just as a reminder, some other staff additions that we had originally proposed, but we removed. The special ed school psychologists, and we talked about the we only have 1. We really need 2. But we removed that because of the cost. The IEP coordinator, again, we I think we've talked extensively about the importance of that. And then initially, we had a tier 3 behavior support in trying to provide some overall support to students who were in need of a tier 3 level type of intervention for their behaviors. We have pulled that as well. Administrators, anything that I missed, big items for staffing? No, okay. So that's the work there. I don't know if you want to have the discussion now, or would you like to first hear an update from Nate on athletics? And then be able to hash it all out. Okay, so
Okay.
Nate, your turn at the podium.
Okay. Thank you. So last week when I was here, I had left for a baseball meeting at the middle school and came back to what I thought was a discussion that had taken place about athletics. So I apologize coming back into the meeting. I didn't have the full context of what had gone on. So I just wanted to be clear that during that discussion, there was a discussion about freshman boys and girls basketball. And I just want to be clear that I would rather not cut the programs, if at all possible. So first thing Wednesday morning, Christina Riddle and I, the administrative assistant, looked at the athletic budget closely. We immediately found an error, a reporting error, entry error that resulted in $21,390 worth of savings immediately. So what we had done accidentally is put double entries in for multiple sports for officials and game workers. So we went in and reduced that line immediately. So that was a savings of $21,390. We'd also talked to Andrea about any money that we had left over in this year's athletic budget to purchase next year's football uniforms, which were $6,360, which I think Pat has already alluded to early on. So that was roughly $27,750 in savings just by those two things. So
update us on the status of the freshman girls and the freshman boys. You
Sure.
alluded to that.
Yeah.
And you gave us the sense that we don't have enough girls to support a freshman team. And you said the same for a boys team.
So we had enough boys to support a freshman team. We follow policy JJAP. That's, follow that all the time. Our girls freshman team did not have enough numbers to support a team this year. So this was year one of year two, of 2 years of being below. Next year, I fully anticipate us having enough girls to fulfill a freshman girls program because we've got a relatively large group coming up from the middle school. So from an athletic standpoint, from a building a program standpoint, I want to keep the programs as much as we possibly can because that's how we build programs. Now, it is true that there aren't many girls freshman programs to play in the KVAC. However, if we have the program, that doesn't mean we can't play outside the conference with sub-varsity teams. So we can play other schools. For instance, the NBC has schools that are locally around us that we can play their JV squads against our freshman team. So we can get games. The hope is that just we keep the program to allow them to develop and to keep, players playing and keep them involved in the program.
But they could still be on JV, right? The freshmen. They just might not play as much.
Yes and no. It becomes a numbers game at that point.
Okay.
So if you carry too many, nobody's satisfied with
No,
playing them.
yeah, I get that.
So it becomes an issue and a management issue for the coaches, for sure.
Okay. Joanne?
I just wanted to know, how much does each program cost in the aggregate?
Okay, so boys freshman basketball, this does not include transportation.
Right. Yeah.
Is roughly $3,500. That's coaching stipends and all other expenses that are included. The transportation wouldn't be an issue for freshmen because they would travel with the JV and varsity. So it's really, it's a non-expense. Girls basketball is the same. However, girls freshman basketball, where there aren't as many teams to play in the KVAC, that number could be reduced just by sheer number of games. We wouldn't have the officials' expenses that we would have for boys, and we wouldn't have the game workers' expenses that we'd have for boys.
But if they went and played other teams in the,
We probably still wouldn't have a full 18-game schedule.
okay.
We try to do as many as we could. But I think last year there were, in the KVEC, I think there were 2 schools that were on our schedule that had freshman girls. So we would certainly play those 2 schools and we'd try to find some other games, but I don't think I'd be able to put together an 18-game schedule. Maybe I'll put together a 10 or 12-game schedule, which would be great. But I don't think we'd do 18.
And would that be additional transportation or traveling?
That would depend. That would probably be additional transportation unless I had them come here, which I try to do. I try to have, visiting teams come here.
Absolutely.
Pay transportation.
But then pay.
Yeah, so.
And then what's the furthest distance that you would,
For basketball or for freshmen?
for that freshman
I would
pickup?
try to stay locally, within Kennebec County. I don't want to, I certainly wouldn't take a freshman team to Bangor.
Just want to be clear.
Yeah, they want to be local.
Okay.
I try to get games with Halldale and probably Monmouth and Winthrop. If they have it looks like they're gonna have a JV team next year, so that'll be good. So stay local.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Joanne?
You mentioned that you thought that there would be a lot of 8th graders moving up that would be freshmen next year. Does the middle school have a program?
Yes, we do.
And can you tell me how many girls are in that program?
Off the top of my head, I think we had mid-20s between the whole program. So we have 2 teams. There's a JV and a varsity at the middle school as well. So we had, 20 something, 30, maybe low 30s in those 2 programs, and that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
6th, 7th, and 8th.
Yes. Yeah. 6th graders are allowed to play on the middle school teams.
Other questions for Nate? Thank you for coming back. Okay. All the information.
Maybe may I share?
Oh, yes,
Sorry.
I would love that.
Well, as the finance person, I just want to give everyone who may not have been on finance a few years some perspective in the history of the increases that we've passed along. And I know this isn't and shouldn't be all driven by money. There are things that are larger than money, but I think it's important that we look at our past history. And my computer just died, but before it did, I managed to jot a few numbers down. So over the past 20 years, the average increase to the locals has been about $255,000. That is a 3.18% increase. Last year, we passed along a $1.4 million increase, 12.97%. The year before that, in FY23, it was a $615,373 increase, which was 6%. I know that when I saw last year's increase, I kind of thought it was a one-time anomaly. Apparently, it's not, because here we are again. And I know that when we hear all of these things and the impact that these cuts are going to make, the natural inclination is to put things back. But I want you to be aware of the kind of increase that we're looking at passing on to the local taxpayers. I was listening to the news the other morning, and I was listening to, they were talking about the city of Portland, and that taxpayers were having a huge fit, I guess is the word, about a $200 increase on a home that was either $350,000 or $375,000. That is the increase we're looking at passing along to somebody with a home of about $150,000. No, we're not Portland. I don't think we should try to operate like Portland. I think we have different decisions and different needs here. But I just want everyone to be cognizant of the kind of impact that we've passed along last year and that we're looking to pass along next year. I'm not suggesting that you cut. That's your work to do. That's not mine. But I just want you to be mindful of where we've come from and the impact last year and what we're looking at passing along next year.
We're not Portland, but our mill rate is not that different than Portland in the city of Gardner.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, and I think about all the extra businesses and resources and restaurants and tourism and the things that Portland has that the city of Gardner does not have, and I have no ill will toward the city of Gardner. I live here and I live here by choice. However, our mill rates are very similar and our capacity to raise money couldn't be more different.
But we need to service kids the same way.
We need to, absolutely.
And I, you know,
Absolutely.
it's hard, like listening to Lauren talk and listening to the conversations. These are very difficult conversations. And it's
Yes.
trying to find that balance. And it's hard, the balancing school budgets on the back of property taxpayers is very difficult. Because somebody, I'm sorry, I know you have something to say, Pat, and I keep talking.
I just want to say, yes, and we've talked about this. If you want to be a community that attracts people to move to your community, then you need to make sure that you have a good educational system.
Agreed.
You absolutely. People move to communities for the educational programs that are offered.
Not for mill rates, but for.
But it's a
for edu-
factor.
It is a factor, but again, people move to communities that have great schools.
As you look at the requested budget scenarios and the impact on property owners, I would say, while this includes the information for a house valued at 150, 250, 350, I don't know of any homes at 150 anymore, right? If anything, we should be starting all of this at 250, 350, and 450, right? It's probably more realistic
Right.
these days. So I would say just lob off the 150 because there's no one here that lives in a house at that value. So at a minimum, you need to really be looking at 250. And that's just the reality these days. What? If you had your house assessed, I am certain it would, I've never seen your house,
Okay, you're
and it would not be
right.
$150.
You're right.
So anyway,
Right. Yes, average.
so
Joanne.
Andrea, you can tell me, is a lot of our difficulty that there are certain things mandated by the state in terms of programs for special ed and all that are not funded by the state and are on the backs of the taxpayers?
Well, yes, there are mandates that we are required that they are not completely funded. Mhm.
And so do we have from all perspectives, like the teachers union, the school board, the administrators union, missives going to the legislature and the appropriations committee saying, you're asking us to do too much, you're mandating these things and you're not funding them?
What the state will tell you is that EPS is designed to bring everyone to a minimum.
It's the great equalizer.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be. And that it's local choices that decide to do either more or less, right? It's not made to bring everybody up to here. So that's where the community choices or the local choices weigh in.
So we have a choice to cut some of those mandated programs?
No.
You have a choice to what extent you wish to fund your budget. Yes.
So that's a different conversation that I don't think we have time for today. There are lots of concerns about that funding formula. There have been studies done on that formula, reports that have said that that formula is underfunded. But that we're not gonna be able to rectify that tonight. And certainly there is a legislative committee for Maine School Boards Association, for Maine Superintendents Association, and for the MEA. And they all do lobby to have that addressed.
And we are well represented on those committees.
And we have lots of programs that are not covered, but we also have a declining enrollment, as do a lot of schools. around the state. But the added issue for us that we talked about is the fact that 2 years in a row, the state valuation for our communities have increased significantly. So our state valuation percentages are double digits. And as a result of that combination, double-digit increases in valuations, decline in enrollment, that we are being asked, or taxpayers have to pay more in order to fund their education. We received $150,000 more in revenue this year, but had to pass along to taxpayers an additional $280,000 just to receive the $150,000. Okay, so.
We've discussed on many occasions, because somebody has value in their home, doesn't mean they have money in the bank. The two, there's a disconnect. So.
And special ed is something that we have to do. That is mandated, but it is critically underfunded.
And we are having greater impact and more students needing those special services.
Well, and we have more students that, because of some of their needs, are requiring out-of-district placements. As we said, the majority of them are $100,000 a pop when you think about the tuition and you think about transportation. And so you saw at the beginning of this process, there was a $682,000 increase.
Right.
Now, we also have a tuition that we discussed, that's $400,000. And that is making a huge impact here, but it's our responsibility. That is what the student needs potentially. And so therefore we are mandated and required to make sure that every child who lives in our district, that their needs are met. And in that particular case, it is a hefty amount. So we are at 6:50.
We are.
So we need some decisions to be made. As I look forward, your next meeting is on the 9th. Okay, so next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, you need to look at the adult ed budget. You need to look at food service. That should be easy peasy, but you'll need to take a look at that. And you need to be making a recommendation to the board on this budget. Because the meeting is going to be canceled on Thursday due to the pending snowstorm, your meeting has been rescheduled for the 11th. So we need the board to actually vote on a proposed budget on the 11th to give Andrea enough time to do all the work that needs to be done behind the scenes so that we can post, so that we can send out the pamphlet, right, the budget book. That takes a lot of time. So you have tonight and you have next week.
No pressure.
No pressure, but I need you to be making some decisions and giving us some really concrete recommendations on how you want us to proceed.
Jack's ready.
Go,
I'd like to make a recommendation to start is that none of this, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do any of the things in the green.
So what can you,
For the very,
can you be more specific? What do you mean the things?
I'm sorry, the deeper staffing reductions in the green box.
Okay, you want nothing in the green.
I don't want anything to do with that. Really feels like we're doing major disservices for our students and our teachers. Like, I know we're in a tight pinch, but I don't like it.
Okay, I just needed to be clear as to what you were,
Chris.
okay.
I appreciate, Jack, where you're going with it, and some of those I already crossed off that I don't want to touch either in the green. But the instructional coach that's not filled, how long has that not been filled?
Well, it hasn't, maybe Angela, rather than me trying to respond, do you want to respond to that? There.
We all had to
And
go.
before she gets up there,
That's right.
if it's a position that's not filled and now we're putting it in the purple as a new position to add to the budget, my personal opinion, I'd rather see the social studies teacher or the English teacher in there than an unfilled instructional coach position.
Yep.
I think there's more value in the other direction, so.
I'll answer your question. So the instructional position, for 2 reasons is not filled, the math coach currently this year. One, it was advertised late and it's advertised as 1 year only because it was ESSER funded. So we had a lot of hits and we had a lot of interest, but no one wanted to take a risk for 1 year only. Or those who did, in my mind, did not qualify, did not move through the screening process. So there's stringent qualifications in my process. That is why I know there's interest and I know it could be filled, but it is on the options of eliminating positions because it is unfilled. And if it would preserve a teacher's position that impacts direct student instruction, I would certainly support that. What I would like to, on a management side, just to be transparent, I would like to preserve some of the dollars that would have been reserved for the staffing position, so that I could contract for a few additional supportive services specifically in math. It will by no means provide that daily support in an embedded way, but it would certainly offer some support and reduce the stress on one individual who is serving the entire district. And then there would still be considerable savings in the position.
Thank you.
That was the only question, right, Matt?
That's all I had.
Yeah, good answer though, yep. I'm with Jack on that too. I'm not on finance, but I'll just tell you.
Thank you. So, but we,
Uh-oh.
Run over here.
Yeah.
well, we need help with math a lot.
Yes, we do. Our
And I'm-
data is poor.
I'm really concerned about that. We need help with math.
So, we have had 2 math coaching positions in the past, once for 1 year. And it was, because it was only 1 year, the person just happened to be moving out of state. Or something like that. Anyway, it does help for the math coach to have a partner, and it does help to provide more routine support. And we anticipate having math support going through the high school this coming year. And we've never had that. So on the plan B is that our current math coach, instead of working in grades 5 to 8, 3 days a week, and K to 5, 2 days a week, and on demand anytime she can, she will be assigned grades 6 through 12 only. And that will be a full-time position for her. In K to 5, I will contract with Maine Math and Science Alliance and Curriculum Associates to provide the additional support. And then where we can be creative in other ways, like on a release time, if our current math coach isn't being utilized in the 6 through 12 space, creating some release time for her, for example, with our kindergarten team on the San Francisco math program, to ensure that they have some check-ins. That's our data. So the theory was if we really leaned into pre-K to 5 or K to 5 really early on, that would influence the upper grade levels, which was starting to take shape. And then COVID hit, so the math coach came in the same year I did in 2018. And then COVID hit and all of our numbers have plummeted like every other district in the world. And so we could have 2 theories of action. One, focus on the early grades again. Or focus on the secondary grades. Those are the math, people who are trained specifically in math education, provide them a little bit of extra support on some really challenging situations where students are operating well below their certification area with someone who has skills in that grade span. Shore that up and provide some more support, and then shift back down to the elementary level. You know, everyone's making compromises in order to serve the students, and this is this is one of them, and they should have, you know, it's not a live person at the moment.
I know that and I hear that, but math builds, correct? It's one of those things that you gotta know this before you can go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I know
Literacy
everyone's-
Literacy is the key to learning
Literacy
all
is the-
content
right,
areas.
right.
I would rather have it be in an unfilled math position than currently in one of our literacy positions. For coaching. It doesn't mean someday that can't happen again, or we can't find a grant, or,
No, but we have a limited amount of time for someday.
yeah, but everyone's making tough decisions.
So that would be those programs the kids use now you would lean on, or it would be a person remotely?
So Maine Math and Science Alliance is a nonprofit
Yeah,
organization.
okay.
So they're expensive.
Yeah, I figured
But
they
we
would be.
contract with them, so we don't get as far with their time as we would with someone who we employ.
Right.
But they're very knowledgeable and usually have spent time in the classroom extensively. So they're credible. And they've done a really nice job partnering with us in developing a plan of professional support for staff in targeted areas over the last few years. And yeah, Curriculum Associates is one of our vendors.
Thank you. I recognize it.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna follow up and say, the only reason I brought that up is, like Andrea said, this is all tough decisions.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything we're doing.
Mhm.
We're already passing along almost a $2.4 million increase to the taxpayers when county and municipal, and all that's going up, and people maybe not have money in the bank, like she said. So tough decisions have to be made.
Yeah.
Everything in the blue box is already going away with the budget that we've been presented. And I know some of it doesn't sit well, the cringes. My personal opinion, I'd rather see a position that hasn't been filled for a year, that we've been making by with, that isn't an actual physical person that we already have, go away, than a social studies or an English teacher. That's my trying to balance the increase with what we're doing and then the impacts on the students. And I appreciate Principal Arnold's presentation. That was really well to see, if we cut it, what does it do?
Right.
We haven't had this position. It'd be nice to have it, but we haven't had it. And I'd rather see that go away and keep the social studies teacher. Right, so that's why I brought it up.
If we can mix and match like that, that would be fantastic.
We can.
Yeah, I agree. A la carte, please.
And maybe it comes back next year, like math is still struggling and we might be able to, who knows, right? Who knows? You can't open that, but that was my thought.
And I appreciate what you're saying. I'm sorry, but I appreciate what you're saying, Chris, and I don't disagree. I'm just worried about all the ground we've lost in math for the last 4 years. And when do we start to make it up? When does that?
Well, we are restructuring. So this year we have piloted a process in the middle school with restructuring some of our instructional delivery, like who's in the room, why they're in the room, using data and ensuring we're still building relationships. This is specifically in math and literacy. And with that alternate approach than how we've just sort of done business before, we're actually seeing great gains. Now, of course, the math coaches and the literacy coach, there's one in the building that's helping with that. So the other rationale for moving this coach to keeping the coach in the secondary field is because the high school has agreed to pilot a similar model in 9th grade and maybe expand it if it does well after the first year, given the student need. And so I'd really like to make sure those teachers trying on that new experience have ongoing support and isn't contracted support. Whereas the elementary staff have had in the past continuous support. And right, I don't need to add further because you added the rest, the layers.
And I wasn't meaning to say somebody wasn't doing it right. That's not.
Oh, I know. I just added in some context to like why those decisions and where the rationale for where the support should.
And just back to Jack and Megan, yes, you have the choice. You guys get to decide. So there may be positions that we added that you say, no, we can't support that. Or there may be reductions that you say, I can't support that, I wanna add that back in. So you can mix and match and, you know, you can add a school psychologist back in if you want, or anything that you feel very strongly about as an entire board. The choice is yours. I mean, it is your budget that you need to send to the taxpayers and that you need to be able to support and ask them to support as well.
So I get the a la carte thing and I'm all over that with you. But I also look at this. And we don't always get the filet mignon on the menu or the lobster on the menu.
And as you struggle with the a la carte and the deeper staff reductions, we can make the MLL work. We can make the elementary administrative assistant work.
When we get a combined elementary school, you won't need it anyway.
That is true.
All the more reason to
That's
push
my
on.
comment.
Is
That's
there
where
an
I'd like to
impact?
make a
Absolutely,
comment.
there's an impact,
I'd
but
like to make a comment about that. That's what I've been holding off to talk about. So just a scenario. This is just an inkling of what's to come when we build a new elementary school. I mean, we're gonna have an increase in budget, probably double what we're asking now, depending on where things even out. If we look at reality, what Skowhegan did this year, they built a $75 million combined elementary school, and their taxes went up by $6.5 million, 15%. So when we talk about that savings, we're sort of like talking out of both sides of our mouth a little. We're doing this and then we're talking about the elementary school. That doesn't sit well with me either. I'm on the fence about that, to be honest. So I just want to be reality, like everything's going up, agreed. Buildings need to be maintained and taken care of too. But staff and teachers seem to be the utmost importance. And in my mind, the combined elementary school is like, we need a high school before we need that, in my opinion, so.
we are
Yeah.
working, just as a reminder, we've just conducted
Right.
interviews for engineering firms, architectural firms, who will come in and do a complete analysis of all of our schools in preparation for application for new construction for all of the schools. That will
Right.
include the high school.
Good.
And yeah, we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
see what happens, yep.
I believe, this is off topic, but we can talk about
Yeah,
consolidation
I just
another
want to be
time.
clear,
That's not
when
for
we keep
today.
saying about reductions in this budget and how much it was last year, it seems on par with others, so I appreciate when Andrea gives us that reality check of where we've been and where we're headed. I don't think it's gonna go down. We know from negotiations, everything costs more. People are worth more, quite frankly. They do deserve benefits. And we have all these little things that we've been doing so good at, and I don't know, it just feels like I appreciate the administrators doing this, but it's really hard for me to see teachers on there. I'm kind of where Chris is headed, but I'm not on finance, so I'll stop talking.
Well, no, but your point is a good one.
Yeah.
Wages have not kept up with inflation for like
It's
40
really
years.
hard, yeah, it's really
And-
hard.
and
Yeah.
so
Well,
we're
neither has
still
the
funding
state,
it.
to Joanne's point.
We're
like the
still
state
funding it
hasn't
the
either.
same way.
Yeah,
And special ed is funded at
that's,
about
yeah,
13%, and
Right.
40 years ago, it was supposed to be at 55%. So
yeah,
it's a big, and we haven't ever talked about how could we possibly fund education differently other than property tax. So
right.
feels like a very
Yeah.
stuck in time way to get something done that you feel so impassioned about. That
Mhm.
it's a winners and losers way to do things. So
Yeah.
but as much as I agree with everything you said, I don't have a better way today.
There isn't,
No, and I don't
Yeah.
know. So I do have a question. The $73 million, was that locally funded or state funded?
It was a combination, I think it was like half.
But even
Again,
so,
that's not a
that's not
conversation
tonight.
for
Yeah,
today.
That's not tonight, but I
Nope.
wanted to
Just
put it out
curious.
there for people that are listening so
Yeah.
that we don't start another, what are they thinking?
I hope they're listening, because I feel like sometimes you all, finance, I've been in finance, you put a lot of time in here, and these are not easy conversations.
No.
And then everybody shows up with their pitchforks ready to take down the school board. It's like, you know, or the towns even.
Hit me
The
here
towns,
with your fork.
The
You got
towns
it.
too,
Yeah.
the town elected folks, you
Right.
know, so.
Diane,
I just have always felt that the four core subjects, math, science, social studies, and English or language arts are crucial all along. And I don't like a gap at the middle school. I want to fund the social studies position because I think it's something they build on, even if they do get it later in middle school. And I think everybody does the best work they can. I'm not casting any aspersions either, but I really think that position is important. We talk about how people today don't understand anything about their history or their government. And that's, you know, they'll get it later, but I think there's a learning time in the middle school where they need it. That's it.
So would you please write that one down? We don't want social studies to go away either. Joanne?
I also don't want the English position to go away. There are so many electives, and if we have problems with study hall, because we've cut all of these electives, there are many more electives in English, and there may be some that are cut. But I'm hearing huge numbers of people wanting certain electives, and those electives are the things that get kids thinking about what they want to do after high school, who do they want to be? And they also help kids that are struggling see, especially through drama and through reading novels and short stories, that other people have had the same problems they do and ways that they can make their lives better and give them a sense of empowerment. So I think the English class is just mandatory, especially since it's a 4-year requirement, my personal opinion.
Well, so then we have decisions to make, finance committee. If you want to keep all these things, where are you gonna cut? What are you gonna cut? But we cannot afford everything.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be known in the public as the person, the board chair who doesn't want anything, and that's not the case at all. But if we're gonna just keep everything, and our administrators have done all this work, and I know nobody wants to cut English, nobody wants to cut science, nobody wants to cut social studies. Nobody, I get it. And it's not as though they're not gonna have, our students aren't gonna have anything if any of these cuts happen. We've been told by all the administrators who've done all the work that we can make it work. We can make it work. And it's not what everybody wants. I completely understand it. So we have a decision to make, finance committee. What are we gonna do? What stays, what goes? I'm not gonna tell anybody what to do. I just happen to be the chair. But I want you to tell me if you wanna put all these things back in, what's gonna go to make it work? So that we're not passing on a $2.6 million budget to the taxpayers.
Just a comment, Becky, to be clear, nobody has given a number. Nobody here has said, I want it to be this percent or this number. That's what you need to do, right?
We're in the green box.
Okay.
And all these green boxes have numbers that we aren't sure of. So.
But I mean, we don't have a number in mind. You guys
I think
didn't say,
what-
I want it to be 2 million.
I think what
right?
Alyssa's referring to is,
Yeah,
is everybody here on finance comfortable with the 2.3?
right,
Or do you wanna see that lower?
right.
Cause then you gotta start going into the green box. If you're comfortable with the 2.374 the way it is, in order to put social studies and English back in, you're gonna have to find that savings
Someplace
elsewhere.
else,
If you're
correct.
comfortable with
Or
what
you're
we have,
increasing it back. I mean,
or you're bringing this
Correct.
number
Right,
back up to
Bringing
where
it
it
back
was
to
last
two
week.
point five.
yeah, right.
So that's what I think you're trying
Yeah,
to
that
ask.
is exactly.
And that's exactly what I'm asking the finance committee to consider.
Well,
I would, do we have to do?
This is
something
finance
specific
committee.
now?
So it's finance committee. So we have tonight and we have next Tuesday to get this done.
Chris, is it you
So-
and me and Megan?
Huh? What'd you say?
It's you and me and Megan? Well, I don't have,
And me.
oh, okay, good.
I'm the chair of finance.
Okay, good.
Not that that's any great thing. You want it, I'll give it. Right now, here's the crown.
Thank you. Well,
I just don't, last year was my first year doing this, and I was absolutely amazed at watching Andrea give all these presentations of all the, getting these, and everybody's presentations, and even tonight too, but I mean, I couldn't believe that anybody could make sense of all these numbers and then go back and change it and do it again, and we did it a bunch of times last year to get it down to where it was. So, I mean, just on that front, I know that the number that you got to, you all did all the work, and the number that you got to, I feel like we can't make that number any lower. So it is just a matter of if we want to move anything around. I don't know. I think it's good work, but we're in a tough spot. Maybe where I don't want to see the English going anywhere. I feel like putting us, I don't want electives to be too, I don't know, hard to get. I want them to be easy to get, and I don't want kids to be sitting in study halls when they could be filling up their elective credits. And I want the electives to be really worthwhile, like public speaking. Oh, that's a big one. That's important. And if kids don't even have the option to take that class, maybe we're doing them a disservice, because dealing with people out in public, I've definitely come across some people that didn't take public speaking. And that makes everybody's day more difficult, you know, like if you just don't even have that option. I don't know, I'm not saying that. Yeah, debate, you know, like making kids stand up and read a play out loud, or read in class, or read what they've written, or I just think those are very important things that come in electives.
So are you making a recommendation? And we have 15 minutes left. So, can someone maybe put a
I'll make a
recommendation on the floor?
I will try. If Pat for next week can look at retaining English and social studies, I think that's a priority for most of what I'm hearing. I'm okay with moving the instructional coach out to offset one of those, because we haven't, like I said, it's not filled. And then Pat, how are you said the ELL teacher to ed tech and the administrative assistant, can you talk about the impacts of those again?
Sure. That MLL, I would actually look to Alicia, and please know that the financial impact of that shift in year one would only be about $10,000. Because of the summer salaries that we need to pay.
So take that one out of my idea.
All right, the administrative assistant, the
ELL stays
impact.
gone, right?
MLL
stays gone.
No, we're not, no, the green box isn't gone.
The elementary administrative assistant, that's about a $48,000 impact. That person right now is shared between LER and through Helen Thompson. Maybe Karen, could you talk a little bit about that role and what that position provides?
Sure, so the person that's filling that position right now will help. She's at my school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. She's at HT on Thursdays and Fridays. And she helps call the families when they're not in school and the parent hasn't called us. So we call every parent, we don't hear from them, so she helps with that. She does our newsletters for both LER and Helen Thompson School. She's kind of the project person. So like we have pre-K screening coming up. We were gonna be having her do the pamphlets to get them ready so that the teachers didn't have to do those. So she's kind of our project person when we need things. She puts it together. We have flip charts that we got from the high school years ago. And she manages those and keeps the backs of those updated. So she's just kind of she does cover. So if my administrative assistant is out, she'll cover. Same thing at Helen Thompson School. So back when we had this position, we didn't have a nurse. We had one nurse in the district is when we put this position in place, and it was really, really helpful. And it's not that she's not helpful. She's very helpful. But when we look at cutting teaching positions, we kind of have, none of the other schools have an administrative assistant.
So if she's out, if your assistant is out and then she's out, who covers that?
Wow, good question. I another
Karen
schools, I
does.
think they do. Well, they would
Or the
come,
principal.
so
We wear
we
many
would have, we would
Yeah.
train an ed tech or myself and the nurse would answer the, I mean, we'd all have to
I mean,
cover.
I'm going back to what Jack said, the direct impact on students would probably be far less
Yes,
by keeping the social studies teacher and English teacher than something like that.
yes.
That's just I'm trying to balance
Gotcha.
some of the
Yeah.
decisions, so. If we can look at that maybe, Pat, and see what the numbers are like, and then have Andrea find us another $100,000 would be great.
All right, Andrea, sharpen that
Check my
pencil.
back pocket.
Her computer just died, she'll get back to you.
But that's, you guys can do what you want, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Maybe the computer fainted.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Overwhelmed.
I'm done.
Joanne?
I was gonna say, are we looking just at positions or can we also take a look at the fact that we just came up with almost $30,000 in savings in athletics? And last time we met, we were talking about perhaps not doing the bathrooms in the middle school. Or are we just looking at positions in terms of
The
cuts?
bathrooms are this year's
The
budget,
bathrooms are this year's budget.
not the one we're talking about.
Okay.
And those athletic cuts are already represented in this budget. They've already been made.
Is that what he was just saying for the?
Andrea's on,
Yes.
there's not a breath that we take that she hasn't accounted for.
That there is.
And also, if we turned the athletic department upside down and shook it, not a lot's
There's
gonna fall out of the
nothing, yeah,
departments.
there's nothing, we gotta,
Right.
So what do others think? Is that,
I would feel way better about trying to find a way where we can keep the English and social studies teachers in our budget. And I realize that that's a hard ask. I like the ideas of well, the ideas of looking at some of the positions that are not like
Phil?
not filled, not as immediately student facing might be a better way to go.
Becky, Megan, you agree? So, well, every single thing here affects students. There isn't one position that doesn't, there is not one person who works in the district in any of our buildings that does not touch the life of a student. And so I cannot value one more than another because they all have an impact. Every single person has an impact on our students. I don't like cutting anything either. However, I'm not willing, personally not willing, and I have no more power than anyone else here. Just be clear about that. I get paid no more money, get just as little as you do.
Oh my God.
I know. Fantastic. But I am really, really conscious of what we're asking taxpayers to do. I don't want to cut anything. I don't want any. But I also know that our administrators, that Lauren, that they have gotten together and said, this is what we can do. So this is what we can make work. I don't like makeshift. I don't like jury rigging things. I don't like doing that either. I like it all well put together. And in a perfect world, we would have the things we not only need, but a lot of what we want. This is not that world. And I am really concerned that next year, depending on what happens with our election cycles, what's going to happen to public education. And this is not a political forum in any way, but we can count on things changing depending on which way life goes. And that is something we cannot sit blindly by and say, I don't want it. I want a la carte. It's just not that cut and dry or simple. We have got to think forward. And Andrea's been very good at showing us what it will mean if we take money from carry forward. If it's all the things, you move one Jenga, to use Jenga, thank you. It puts us on a precarious edge and we have to be mindful of that. So that's what I think is we're in a scary spot. We have to think about that. Alyssa, your arm's gonna fall off.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, because I think like Joanne's new and others maybe don't know, I wanted to step through, I ask this every year and Andrea laughs at me. But if we send a budget out for referendum and it doesn't pass,
Yeah.
it could happen, we come back and have to redo it anyway. So I always ask that because it's not necessarily happened in your tenure, right?
It's never happened, but we've
Okay.
come within 17 votes of it.
Okay.
Wow.
Cause I always ask that question, like, how close are we? to-
14.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, if we vote at the full board meeting for the budget, the towns of Pittston and Randolph, it's calculated by our size. So our vote doesn't have as much weight as some folks in Gardner and West Gardner. And I say that because that's kind of shitty in my opinion, but that's the way it's,
You
that's
said
the
it with
way
a
it's
mask
set
on
up.
even.
I did, and I made a face, but you can't see it.
But I know it.
But you know what I mean, because
I
you all
do.
know, I was here when we
Yeah.
talked about Hamlin and everything, and that's just the way it's constructed. That's the way it is. Those are the rules of the game. So, you guys have put in a lot of time, the administrators have put in a lot of time. My gosh, it's gonna be really hard, but to try to vote on something after we've come through this is gonna be tough.
And if it doesn't pass,
And if it, yeah,
there's additional cost to the
That's right.
district because you have to go through
now we
the
gotta do it
process again,
again. Yeah,
right? And so
Yep.
you have to employ or hire
right.
all of the clerks in all of the towns. And it means that our summer
Yeah,
will
we're
be
doing that.
spent redoing all of
We'll
that.
be right
And
here.
that's where I
So-
say, elected officials, you should care about what we're doing here
Yeah.
and be involved and ask questions.
Right.
I think also that parents and
Totally.
stakeholders should be in here as well, because one of the questions we should be asking is this is the reality. What do you want us to cut?
Right,
What do you want us to cut from the school board? And if we're not hearing from the parents, then I think it's kind of hard to say, oh, we just are not going to take this, you know? Okay, so what do you want to cut? I'd like to do that before.
No, it is the responsibility of the board. That's what you were elected for.
Right.
Is to make those decisions, not for parents to make that decision.
So
But
we were
certainly,
elected-
we need to be responsive and listen
Yes.
to the wishes of the community. You absolutely need to do that.
And
But
the
you
wishes-
only do
need to
that
be
in this room.
responsive.
Yes.
You need to be responsive of the economic situation within our communities. You need to be responsive to the decline in enrollment. That's a factor. And so there does come a time where you have to make some difficult decisions because enrollment's declined. And so the high school in 2017 had enrollment of 640 students. Their enrollment now is 581. There's a difference of 60 students. So, 60 students. So there is going to have to be some corresponding reductions as a result. You can't continue to always staff at the same level across the district. And you've done that work. You know, at the elementary, it's been really easy because you can look at the classroom. It's easier to make that decision. At the middle school, you reduced last year with a social studies position. The high school has over time reduced periodically. They have not in the last few years, but they have. I mean, they've gone from, like in English, we'll pick on English. They have gone from 8 teachers in the mid-2000s to 7 teachers in 2017-18. So, you know, we do try to respond, we do try to be cognizant of that decline, but that's gonna continue. So as potentially, okay? And if that does continue, you're going to have to make some of those really, really tough decisions because it will result in decline, in a reduction of some electives. But it comes down to sustainability, right? What can you sustain as a community as well? It's tough. It's a really tough process. It's a tough decision-making. We don't want to ever reduce opportunities for our students. But you have to also be able to pay for it.
I just want to say, I'm only seeing a reduction of 2 from last year to next, from this year to next year in the high school. Now, down the future, yes, there's reductions. We do the budget every year. Then I think when we have the reductions is when we should start doing the cutting as opposed to cutting now a position.
Well, I'm just saying, you've had a reduction, you were at 640, you're now at 581.
From what year?
17, 18 to now, and no, there's been no reduction in the staffing from that time frame. We were at 7, say, and we're still at 7. So they're just that time is approaching, okay? Jack.
What I'm hearing from you is that we should trust the process of the administration that has been working so very hard on this.
What, can I interrupt? What I'm saying, what I'm trying to say, and it's a very delicate
There's no nice
conversation.
place to say
There
any
is
of this.
no great place to be, that if you make this reduction, and yes, we've worked hard on it, it will impact kids. There will be a reduction in electives. There's no other way of looking at it. That will happen. And so you need to make the decision as to whether you want that to happen now or not. What I am also saying on the other side is the reality is we are seeing a decrease in our student enrollment. And there has to be a corresponding reaction to the fact that we are also experiencing that enrollment. Is that this year that there's a reduction as a result? Is it a future year? That's a decision that you will have to make. But unless something turns around with the enrollment and we start to see an increase, some of these decisions just will have to be made, because we cannot continue to put forth $2.5 million increases to taxpayers. And so that's what I'm trying to say. And it's really tough. We have amazing teachers in this district.
Absolutely.
And to think that there are staff members who are going to be impacted by this, to think that there are electives that our students won't be able to access, I don't want that. You know, I want to be able to give them the breadth of the curriculum that they deserve. It's a balancing act. And we're getting to that place where we've got to decide, you have to decide, how much can you continue to support, to push, to send year after year annual increases of over $1 million to taxpayers.
And as a
That's a hard
reminder,
conversation.
the amounts that we're looking at moving to taxpayers does not include the county or the city or the town, whatever increases they're going to add to what we're proposing. So, I mean, for somebody, you know, it could be $1,000, and that might be their entire raise for the entire year. I mean, we have lots of staff members who receive increases of $1,000, and there are other demands, other than property taxes on their money, on their funds. So
It's hard.
it's very hard.
People don't get raises at all, so.
It's really hard.
So I have been given what I've heard, and I want to see from finance committee members, is this the direction that I should go back and look at the amount of money we have in the budget for the instructional math coach, look at that position, look at the administrative assistant position, and any other thing that we can find, and do what we can to retain the English and social studies position. Is that the sentiment of the finance committee?
That would be my sentiment.
That is my understanding of the things that we've just covered, yes.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And then next Tuesday, we'll have to make a decision though.
Yeah.
You
To send us something to the board.
Or we might say the same
Absolutely.
thing that we
Yep.
just put.
That doesn't mean next Tuesday you can't move it back if you don't like it, but
Correct.
that, at that point, you'll have to, I may not be here. But you may have to, yeah, this might be my last meeting, we'll see. You might have to,
He's got other things he's electing.
you might have to,
Oh, God, that's.
but you're gonna have to push something to the board by next Tuesday. So
You're right, right? You're right.
you can write me in, because if I lose the other one, I'll come back.
So,
Good man.
and I don't want to necessarily say what I would do, because I want it to be owned by the committee. And I
You're a
don't
member
wanna
of
be-
the committee and you,
I'm just another
you
person.
know,
You were
yeah, but you're a member of the
experienced member
committee
of our
and, you know, we have these conversations in board training that if you have an opinion and you don't share the opinion, then
Why are you here?
Cause I had nothing else to do. Just, no.
Lies.
Lies, all lies. I mean, if we can find the money and come out unscathed. Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna cut anything. I'm worried about math. I'm worried about all these things that we're not exceeding the standard on.
You gotta remember, we're also adding a bunch of stuff.
Of course, I know. I
That's the
know, but I
thing.
also know where we are.
I know.
I know where we are and it's
But we're
just.
not alone where we are, is where I find a little comfort.
Yeah, but I don't.
Yeah.
and
That's the
I
only
hear that.
thing.
I hear that, but
Yeah.
our personal greatness is what I'm here for, is where, because people move here because they want great schools. So it doesn't matter to me that everybody else is,
Which is electives and AP classes, in my
Exactly,
opinion.
Yes.
exactly.
yeah, I
That's
get
how I
it.
feel.
So if we can do this without,
Maybe some finagling, like, yeah.
yeah,
I
move some
get
money
you.
around. Andrea, don't do anything crazy. But I want to be clear. I want all the things. I want science. I want social studies. We desperately need social studies. And English and we need all of it. So if we can find a way to do it, then yeah, to the blue box.
okay.
But if we can't find a way to do it, we're back in the green box.
The only reason I didn't
And that's
scream
my
about the
responsible
science
mom
was-
of the money going over there. So let's make it, I'm sorry, I didn't need to put my hand in your
No,
face.
you're fine.
Yes, Diane?
You were talking about balancing and that is really hard, but you just mentioned something about balance. I feel really concerned for people who would be severely hurt by cost. There are some government programs for that, but somebody will go through the cracks on that one and that's not good. But the other thing is, there are people who, as you just said, I'm just repeating what we've just said, would move here and want the schools to offer
Yeah,
richness.
yes, and that's
So
why.
that's
we're
a
here.
balance
That's a good
too.
word too, like you just said.
Yeah.
The engagement and being that, and the richness, I like those words, exactly,
And that is why we're here,
right.
to enrich and make it,
Yeah.
to leave, make an impact, make it better. And these are the conversations that are not easy to make better when we just don't have much. So thank you for Finance Committee for picking the à la carte menu.
So,
And continuing to do the work.
We'll continue to do the work. Future agenda, again, in addition to continuing here, you'll have an adult ed budget that you will need to review and approve. And you will have food service that you will need to.
Everyone,
take a look
please
at.
come back next week for the end of the show.
What I wanted to ask.
There's that movie, The Great Circle Hotel.
Right.
I just think it's included as a.
I know.